Hello people of the YouTube universe, my name is ajbubba and today I'm going to be playing some Hypixel Skywars, but really this video is going to be one of these non-live commentary videos, and I'm going to be talking about probably my favorite book I've ever read. So when I used to be in middle school, I would read quite a bit, like 2 or 3 books a day, reading quite a bit. So I have read a large sum of books, and you could probably comment a book, and there's a good chance I've probably read it. As I got into high school, I stopped reading nearly as much. And by nearly as much, I mean I started reading like a book a year. What really did it in for me is I had to read Gulliver's Travels, and I didn't know the book was a satire, so I just absolutely despised that book for everything that it was, which, you know, in hindsight, I should probably reread it. I'm sure it's a good book. I read this book in my junior year of high school. The author was recommended for a project I was doing. I opted to not do the author's most popular book that was recommended on the the project list of books we were supposed to read. Instead, I opted to choose another book of his that had seemed interesting to me because I'd heard it in like a Jeopardy question. And I'm actually reading the more popular book right now. So the book is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. It is a lengthy book. It is 928 pages, and it's English print, which is a very long book, though that is because it was initially printed as 3 separate books, you know, that came out a year apart, and that, well, 2 books that came out at the same time and 1 book that came out a little under a year later. But then when it was published in English and translated from Japanese, it was published as 3 books. So I really enjoyed this book, and not for, you know, the reasons. The plot is a little convoluted. It's a very lengthy book, and the story itself it's nothing special per se. It's a very interesting story. You know, if you watch like all the Marvel movies and you read like the Multiverse of Madness, or, you know, the new movie with let me look it up real quick while I'm sitting here. Everything Everywhere All at Once with Michelle Yeoh. You know, kind of similar plot to that in terms of having parallel dimensions, like multiple universes, but it is not a sci-fi book. And I think that's what kind of hooked me in with it, because you start this book and, you know, the plot summary makes it seem like a sci-fi book, like it's going to be this book about having multiple dimensions. And the book starts and it reads normally. I mean, it reads like just like a crime thriller through the first 250 pages, and then the next 200 pages read like a good old just like book. Like it's just a story about a guy writing a book for the next 200 pages. But slowly but surely, as you get through this 900-page book, everything starts to kind of twist together, and things that you heard, you know, on page 134 come in on page 454. And you're like, wait a minute, that was, you know, pretty important near the beginning of the book. Why is the author bringing it back up now? And no, this is not like an essay assignment, guys. I am well past when I've read this book and when it was needed to be done, you know, for an essay. I really do just like this book. So the story itself follows 2 people, Almame and Tango, and I'm sorry if my pronunciation of these is not great. I am not Japanese, and I don't even watch like anime, so my pronunciation is just how I would read these things, and how their 2 stories tie together. Now, I don't really want to give up many of the plot points, and even telling you that their stories end up together is a little bit of a spoiler for the book, though, you know, you could probably figure that out just from the fact that it is a book and, you know, things follow lots of, you know, similar plot points. And they, you know, Almame is a woman who works for a dowager who hires her to kill men who were, you know, who had committed domestic violence. And Tango is an editor who finds himself editing essentially what he thinks to be a child prodigy's poem, or, you know, like short novel or manuscript is what they call it in this Wikipedia article. But, you know, he kind of finds that this manuscript this girl has apparently written, is way beyond what it seems to be that she's able to write. And, things start to change. But what I think I really, really liked about this book was the length of it. A very long book that tries to have a very broad plot could be a little confusing sometimes. I mean, if you were to read all five, I think there's 7 Harry Potter books, but if you were to read the first 5 Harry Potter books as one continuous story, it would probably be pretty hard to read, and it would probably be 2,000, maybe not that long, but it would probably be 1,600 to 2,000 pages long. But this book at 900 pages, the story just seems to keep you hooked in and keep going the entire time. You're following these characters throughout the story, and you get to a point where you're like, wow, I don't really know what could happen next. I feel like these two characters are on a collision course with each other, but they're not making the right choices at all to get to this collision course. And then all of a sudden you read 200 pages about one of the main characters' father, and everything that's happened in his life up until now. And you're like, wow, I really feel like I've gone so far away from what I was initially reading. And then in the last 60 or 70 pages there of that portion of the book that talks about this, that feels like it's gone off plot, it ties right back together. And I think that's something Murakami has done really well. I'm 70 or so pages into this book I'm reading called A Wild Sheep Chase, which is the book I was originally supposed to read for this project, I'm pretty sure. And it's definitely a very similar thing, and the topics this book covers are pretty different. I probably have some younger viewers watching this video, so this is not a book. If your parents don't let you watch rated R movies, don't read this book, which is a very funny thing to say, because I don't know how many people are actually watching a book review with Minecraft in the background. And this is not even a book review, really. I'm just kind of talking about this book that I enjoy because I didn't want to record another type of video. But I don't know. There's something about this book and the length that it has, and how every time you turn to the next page, there's more story. I don't really want to give up much of the plot here, but every time you turn the next page, these things that you're reading about get closer to each other. You just want to keep reading, no matter how far apart it seems that these plot points and these threads are getting. They do end up tied back together, and I don't know. I don't really want to cut it off here. I feel like my thoughts have been a little scattered, but I didn't even write a script. I'm just talking off the top of my head. I think if you like reading or you want something to read, maybe read it in parts, because a 900-page book is something pretty lengthy. But I feel like this is just a story people should read. It's not necessarily groundbreaking. It's not going to give you some existential crisis. It's just interesting. It makes you think a little, not really a ton. It's it's like what I said. It's not a groundbreaking type of story. It makes you think, and it makes you want to keep reading. It really inspired me to read a little bit more than I have. I should keep reading more. So 1Q84. My favorite book ever, purely by length. I've said 5 times, the plot's nothing particularly special. I just really enjoyed the length of this book. So this is a really weird upload, and I think this video will get 40 views. But if you somehow have watched probably 8 or almost 9 minutes of this commentary, I do hope you enjoy, and I will see you on the next one.